Few people possess talent that has the ability to blow the masses away. Talent that is so captivating to the point that people have no choice but to give recognition and acknowledgement that comes with the gift. If you consume art regularly, there's probably someone that has created a piece of artwork that has made you have some level of admiration for them. A favorite song, album, movie, hell, even the likes of a YouTube video. But oftentimes, whenever a prominent figure rises in the media, eventually scandals begin to cloud over them, and as a result, people begin to see the real person outside of their art, changing their perspective on how they feel about that figure. Which brings up a philosophical topic that has been heavily debated for years now. Can you separate the art from the artist? This question is a hard one, with Kanye recently imploding on Twitter again and trying his absolute best impression of a certain German man from the 40s. This question has been brought to light to be discussed once more. Like seriously, being a Kanye fan is getting harder and harder each day. But ultimately, I want to answer both stances and come up with the best answer possible. The reason the answer is complex is because you have to differentiate the nature and morals of a person while observing their art pieces. There's been many cases of people quote unquote separating the art from the artist though. For example, with someone like Dan Schneider. Recently, he was exposed for the horrific practices behind the scenes at Nickelodeon in the 2000s. The way he treated childhood stars and forcing them to do these weird feet scenes in the shows he wrote is more than enough to call him creepy and to be removed from those spaces. On the other hand, however, he wrote some of the best television shows for preteens, shows including Drake and Josh, iCarly, Victorious, Zoe 101, Sam and Cat, and a whole lot more. It's no secret that these TV shows were absolute classics and got some of the best out of these young talents at the time. He was unfortunately a really good scriptwriter, and it's hard to deny his capabilities in children television shows. I think in scenarios of things like this, it's a bit easier to separate what Dan created and who he was because he isn't on camera like the rest of the cast, and oftentimes people are so focused on the stars on the TV shows rather than outside of them. Same thing goes for someone like Harvey Weinstein. Now, I won't talk about his crimes here since YouTube will absolutely cook me with demonetization, but if you're curious on what he did, Google is your friend. With all that being said, he's also responsible for some great movies and is responsible for developing so many prominent actors in Hollywood. Also, he was behind many successful movies and even some I consider personal favorites. I think in scenarios like this, people can make the argument that art isn't necessarily with the writers of the movie, but more so with the actors that help bring the movie itself to life. People are focused on what's in front of the camera rather than who's behind it. If they don't have to see the person who made the art, it gives them a case that they can separate the art from the artist. But what about those who can't? What about the stance that no matter how much you try, you'll always see the artist that resides within the artistry? What then? I think that's the case for music. To me, under these circumstances, there's no way that you can just separate the art from the artist. I've expressed and made clear some of my favorite artists in videos in the past and how some of their work changed my life for the better. The most impactful one is unfortunately Kanye. Kanye has always been allowed to get away with a lot during the peaks of his career. It's because his music was in a league of its own and allowed him to be simply untouchable. But with the awful decline of his new music and his barrages of tweets on X, I think it's safe to say that the end is near. I mean, his music has become so awful that even the "he made graduation" excuse won't cut it anymore. People try to argue, oh, just separate Kanye from his old music, but you kind of can't. I think you can denounce the awful messages and actions from said individual as of now, but their music is literally a direct extension of who they are. Music allows the listener to connect and build emotion to the artist that they love listening to. The passion and dedication that an artist pours into their music usually comes from self-reflection, who they are, and what they're going through. So the art is intertwined with the artist. I absolutely hate the turn that he's made in his career. He's going out of his way to sabotage the career he's worked so hard on by trying his best impression of this dude, of all people. Why? Really, I don't get it. Every month I hear Kanye's name in the news and I have to brace myself for what he's gonna do next to get himself in trouble. Unfortunately, I can't use the excuse of separating the art from the artist because Kanye was the one who made these groundbreaking albums in his career. I can't just take away from the records that he created. Albums like The College Dropout describe his life, his struggles, and his perseverance to make it as an artist and his attempts to be the best rapper. I have to attach that music to him. Now, with all the controversy, all the awful music, all the hate he's spewing, will this stop me from going back to listening to the old music that made him the best artist of his generation at the time? Some of y'all might hate me for this next answer, but honestly, No. In categories like music, yes, you cannot separate the art from the artist, but I do also believe that context is important while listening to music. People always change and evolve, whether for the better or worse. Just because Kanye is acting like the way he is today doesn't necessarily mean those were his thoughts while making his earlier music. Could he have been thinking those thoughts while making music back then? Maybe, but it'd be hard to prove because clearly those thoughts didn't reflect in his music back then. If you're disappointed at the person he's become and ultimately want to cut out all of his music and never listen to him again, I respect it, especially since music is an area where art cannot be separated from the artist. That doesn't mean I will though. I still denounce what Kanye says and the absolute terrible things he's been doing as of late. It's pretty disappointing to see one of your favorite artists slowly become the idea that they've always spoken against for the entirety of their career. You may not know this, but he fought against the system, spoke against racism, and gave black people a voice and an outlet to express themselves creatively with no shame. And now he's doing the Elon, but he did make Graduation. I know it's not a great excuse, but we're talking about the best hip hop album ever made. Listen, before you judge me, re-listen to I Wonder one more time. It'll change your life, man. You can lock up Kanye in a room with a toaster, a Beyblade, a candy wrapper, and a laptop, and he'll make you one of the best beats ever. He's that talented. Does that absolve him from criticism? No. Does that mean I'll no longer condemn him just because he's talented? No, I'll always hold him accountable for the terrible things he does, and I'll never blindly defend him just because he made some of my favorite music in the past. But if this opinion makes you hate me, hey, fair enough. I can't control how you feel. But just know, I still love you, King. But let's get back on topic. Can you ultimately separate the art from the artist? In my personal opinion, probably not. Art is ultimately self-expression, an expression of a person's ideas and morals. I can't just put that aspect of them to the side and pretend it's not there. It's practically impossible. I can't pretend that I'm not supporting that person's music because in totality, I still am. But let's say that Kendrick was bored one day and just went full Kanye on Twitter. Does that change the music he made in the past? Music that at one point represented Kendrick wanting genuine change for people in the projects, combating racism, and to uplift people to become better individuals in their life. Does that make his entire discography invalid? Not necessarily. He still made fantastic points and made great music to go alongside it. What am I gonna do? Act like someone like Yeet made To Pimp a Butterfly? That doesn't even make any sense. All that music represents Kendrick at one point in his life. I'd condemn the stuff Kendrick's doing if he did that, but I'd still probably listen to his previous work, and that's just me being honest. Same thing with the Nickelodeon shows that Dan Schneider wrote. He was awful for the practices over there, and in no capacity should he work with children anymore, but I'll still watch Drake and Josh and iCarly because those were fantastic shows. At the end of the day, I think everyone has their own limits too. Like if tomorrow Taylor Swift said she likes eating pineapple on pizza, I'd no longer be a Swiftie. That's a line even the devil wouldn't cross. Nah, I'm just kidding. Not really. But what if the creator of YouTube stepped over a moral boundary that was too far for you? Would you stop using the platform? Or if your favorite artist tomorrow pulled a Kanye, would you still be a fan of their old music? Would you never listen to the music they've made in the past even though it inspired you at one point? It's not an easy question, so I'd like to know your thoughts in the comments on why. Talent, unfortunately, doesn't choose morality at the end of the day. Great Kendrick quote. Harvey Weinstein unfortunately made good movies. R. Kelly unfortunately made good R&B music. Dan Schneider unfortunately made good TV shows. As much as I'd love to just appreciate the art pieces alone, those art pieces still represent the artist one way or another. So ultimately, you can not separate the art from the artist.